Hi guys, I'm Charlie, a Charlie Book Fanatic. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to tell you about all of my favorite books of 2018. I didn't have a whole lot of favorite books in 2018. I didn't have any 5-star reads, but I did have some 4.5 stars in there, and I definitely did have some favorites, but I'm not like other booktubers who have like a list of 10 favorites, because I'm just not that kind of person. I'm very critical of my reading, and I just don't have a lot of books that end up being my favorites. I am very picky in that way. The first book I want to talk about is a book I actually read fairly recently. I think it was back in November when I read it, and that is Save the Day by Morgan Matson. I have read all of Morgan Matson's books and I liked all of them, but they definitely weren't 4.5 star reading material for me, and this one was so different. This is my favorite book of hers, and I know that's like a controversial thing to say because a lot of people didn't like this book, and I can definitely see why. This is definitely a chaotic book, like disaster after disaster after disaster keep happening, and it's fairly unrealistic in that way, but I thought this book was highly entertaining and I loved it for that. I laughed so many times throughout this book, and I never have that, and because it is such a humorous book and it made me laugh, it is definitely one of my favorites because I can't really pinpoint a lot of books that make me laugh, and I have noticed a pattern that when a book actually makes me laugh and cackle, it just ends up being a favorite, and this was one of them. I love this book so much. It's about a girl whose sister is getting married, and this whole book takes place over the weekend where her sister gets married and her whole family comes back in town, and it all takes place in her house with all of her siblings and her parents, and a lot of hijinks are going on. I just love Morgan Matson's ability to write a huge group of people in one room. Everything went so dynamic and everyone just has the wittiest comebacks, and I really love it. I loved every single sibling in this book. They all had their own part to play. They all have such different personalities, and I loved every single one of them. I was sad when this book ended, honestly. I want more of these types of books from Morgan Matson. I want more books with huge cast of characters and them all being witty together, having banter together. I love that. That is definitely Morgan Matson's forte, and I hope I get to see more of that. I will definitely pick up Morgan Matson's next book, and I hope it is of the same quality as this one. Considering her other books, I am kind of afraid that's going to end up being a 3-star read, although that is not terrible. It is kind of disappointing after reading her latest book, which ended up being such a treat for me. Another book from an author that I had read one book by before, and it ended up being a 3-star read, and then I read the companion novel to this book that came out in 2018, and I absolutely fell in love with it. It has the most beautiful cover, and that is More Than We Can Tell by Bridget Camera. Since then, I have written Bridget Camera to tell her how much I loved her book, and she had this thing going on where she would send fake tattoos to people, and she mailed some to me, so I have some fake tattoos that I can stick on my body. I have done this once, and I'm keeping some of them for memory purposes to just remind me of this book. This was one of the first books of 2018 that really put me in a good mood. It made me feel like I wasn't in a reading slump, like there were still books out there that I could really love, because that is a struggle I have with books nowadays. More Than We Can Tell follows 2 main characters. One of them is a character from other book that I read. He was a side character and he's the main character in this book. He is called Rev. He has a troubled past. His dad was this religious fanatic who blamed him for everything, and he is now with foster parents who take better care of him, but Rev had the hardest time coming to terms with his foster parents. Foster parents are both black, Rev is white, and I love the diversity in there. That this book did really well on that. I just had a hard time trusting these people, and they tried so hard to make him trust them, because obviously he never really could trust his dad. Besides Rev, we also have our main character Emma, and Emma has created her own online game that all gets out of hand when there is someone stalking her on this online game and making her life miserable throughout it. Emma's dad is a game creator. That is the only thing she can bond over with her dad. But Emma is a very quiet person. She likes to be by herself. She's definitely a loner. She doesn't have a lot of friends, and this online game is somewhere she can retreat, come back to herself. It's very sad that someone is trying to take that from her by invading her private space that she created for herself. And Rev and Emma meet in the unlikeliest of ways, and they try to help each other, they connect, and I thought that was so sweet. This is one of the sweetest romances I have read, and this story meant so much to me for a plethora of reasons, but eventually they both come out on top. The way they help each other with that, because they are coming from such different pasts, they have such different struggles, but they still try to see each other's side. And I think that is really beautiful. I also read the second book in the Warcross duology, Wildcard by Maria Lu. I loved Wildcard. I know a lot of people were saying that they didn't love Wildcard as much as they loved Warcross, but I like Wildcard so much more than I did Warcross. Because there is a character in this duology called Hideo. He is the creator of this game called Warcross. And he invites this hacker called Emika to Tokyo to help him with security of his game. He accidentally glitched herself into the game. He found out it was her and he feels like he needs her on his team. The main character of the book is Emika, but Hideo plays such a huge part in the story. And I feel like Hideo is the secret main character. He is the character the whole story really revolves around. And I love how complex he was. And that complexity definitely stems from the second book. His character was so much more developed in the second book. You really got to see his past and the whole reason why Hideo created Warcross and what he is intending to do with it. And I feel like Emika was just a bystander, really. I didn't feel like the whole romance between Emika and Hideo was necessary. I do like that Emika was the main character, but the story was definitely more about Hideo, and I loved Hideo. Although I didn't agree with everything he stood for, I definitely feel like everything played out well. I was just really rooting for him and I felt so much sympathy for him. Definitely has been a while where I really felt for a character and I just rooted for them and I wanted to know more about this character, and Hideo was definitely that character in this series for me, and Wildcard expanded on that so much more, which is why I like Wildcard more than I like Warcross. And I love Maria Lu's writing. I think every single book I read by Maria Lu now is going to be on the favorites list of mine. I loved her The Young Elites trilogy, especially the second book, The Rose Society. The trilogy was amazing to me. This duology was amazing to me. Can't wait for her next book, and I definitely hope that book will end up on my favorites list of 2019. The next book I want to talk about is a book that meant so much to me, and that is Becoming Clementine, the third book in the Velvet Jean series by Jennifer Niven. This book, man oh man. It has been a while since I read a book in the Velvet Jean series, and this past year I finally finished the last two books in this series. This book is definitely my favorite book in the series. Velvet Jean has come such a long way. It's called Becoming Clementine because Velvet Jean is disguising herself as this woman called Clementine in France. It has to do with the Second World War. She is really a spy in the Second World War, and it is so cool. It's basically a spy novel, and Velvet Jean has done so many great things. She's really a symbol for woman empowerment. I love that. I love Velvet Jean as a character. I love that she is okay with her sexuality, with falling in love with different people, with doing all of these things like driving her own truck, being a female pilot, and becoming a spy in a time where it really wasn't normal for women to do those kinds of things. And Velvet Jean just does all of it, and I think that is so great. This book definitely made me laugh. It made me cry a whole lot. And I just love how Jennifer Niven has the capability to make me care about so many different characters and make me wonder, like, how will this character fare on from now on? And I feel like she writes very realistically. I feel like I'm there with Velvet Jean, experiencing all of these different things. And I love Velvet Jean's family. You see her brother Johnny Clay throughout all of these books, and you always see him come back, and their relationship is so hopeful and so close, and I love how he always comes back in some way, and Jennifer Niven does not forget about Velvet Jean's family even if she is not there physically with them. And the last book is a book I don't have a physical copy of yet, but I definitely want one, and that is Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book in his new Skyward series. I don't know how many books there are going to be. I know there's definitely a second book scheduled because it is a series. I don't know whether it's a duology or a trilogy or whatever, since Brandon Sanderson writes quite big series, but I loved Skyward. I have read books by Brandon Sanderson before, but I never really loved them. I've read his Mistborn trilogy, but they weren't my favourites. I also read his standalone Warbreaker, which isn't a standalone anymore, I think, and I didn't really like that one particularly. I rated it around 3 stars. It was average. But then I read Skyward because I saw a really good review of it and someone described it and the cover looked really cool, and I decided to give it a chance, and boy am I glad that I did. This book and Save a Date by Morgan Matson really proved to me that even though I thought previous books by these authors were average, that next books can still be incredible or great to me. And I think that is also a very hard thing because there is no such thing as giving up on an author if I can still like one of their next books. That's also one of my biggest flaws, I think. If I didn't didn't like any of the previous books by an author, I still have hope for the next book. That is why I continued on with Throne of Glass, that is why I continued on with Fallen Kingdoms, and they still disappointed me in the end. But there was still the tiny chance that I would have loved any of those books. And that is definitely the case with Skyward. I loved Skyward. Skyward is about a main character called Spensa who is enrolling in this flight academy because her dad used to be a pilot, but then he betrayed his crew in this big space battle by flying away and they had to shoot him down. Spensa does not believe that her father was a traitor and she is set on finding out whether he was or wasn't. But then she finds out that no one is really planning on letting her go into the sky since they are afraid that she has the same gene that her dad has that wants to make her betray her team eventually. And Spensa is just set on getting into the sky and becoming a pilot and doing her own thing. And I love this book because of the action scenes. That is always something I will commend Brandon Sanderson on. I love the way he writes fighting scenes. And the space battle scenes in this book are definitely something to pick this book up for because of the utmost quality, honestly. I kept reading this book because of the space battles. Not like the characters weren't great, I loved all of the characters and I cried for them when some of them died inevitably because the stakes are high in this novel. In space battles, no one can always survive and I definitely felt that throughout this book and I hope I will keep feeling that throughout this series because that is one of the things I love about books. That others can make you feel things, they can kill characters and you care about them. Even though they aren't real, they're fictional, but you still get this feeling of rooting for them. You sympathize with them and then they die and you feel this sense of loss and grief, and that is something I felt with Skyward. And that shows to me that Brandon Sanderson definitely has this great writing skill, which I obviously knew before, but I never really felt before. And in Skyward I did feel that. And that is what makes this book one of my ultimate favorites because I felt lost for the characters. I felt like there were real stakes. I felt like there were really big things at stake here. And even though Spensa is not one of the most likable characters out there, you still root for her. You still root for this girl who has lost her dad and is trying to prove to the world that she is not the same. That she can and wants to do this and that she wants to fight for humanity. And I love that. I just love everything about this book. I genuinely can't pinpoint a flaw and this was my favorite book of the year. If I would have had any order in this video, this would be #1 and I would recommend it to everyone. Even if you haven't liked Brandon Sanderson before, I recommend you at least give this one a try because it is inherently different from his other works. So these are my favorite books of 2018. There's still a least favorite books of 2018 video coming. Let me know down below what are some of your favorite books of 2018. Were they the same as mine? I would love to know. Thanks for watching. Goodbye!